the nominee as a central governor. Mr. Speaker, during this time, we are dealing with a lot of challenges as an economy. We have issues that must be thought out clearly. The only way we are going to save this country is by ensuring that we pass or advance economic policies that will be able to really think about the future generation. Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest challenges we have in this country is that a lot of people who are tasked with responsibilities are not qualified enough. And in most cases, they are appointed based on who they know or where they've been. But when it comes to the issue of monetary policy, when it comes to the issue of an economy of a country, such as this, where, Mr. Speaker, over the last 3 years, actually 2 years, we have seen the way the exchange currency in this country has gone so down. Today, a dollar is trading at about 150 shillings. And I dare say, all that leads down to the policies. When you look at our neighboring countries, Mr. Speaker, a good example is Ethiopia. Another good example is a country like Rwanda. There are policies which are defined to protect the currencies of those countries. And when you have someone lead the central bank, you should have somebody who understands the consequences and unintended consequences of protecting trade in the country. Mr. Speaker, if you go to Ethiopia today and you attempt to exchange dollars, when you do it in a hotel, the exchange rate would be, for $1, you'll probably get 55. If you go to the streets, you will get 110. In fact, in most cases, when you go to those hotels and you try and pay with their own money, they will not allow you to do that. In fact, what they'll tell you, no, you pay with dollars because they want to build that economy. Mr. Speaker, if you trade in a country like Rwanda today and Burundi, it will be very difficult for you to be able to take all your profits out and take them to your country. I am not saying that we should start policies that protects or hinder investors from repatriating their profits, but I think we have to have a balance. This issue where the dollar is constantly on a free fall, it's something which should worry any economist in this country. Any leader in this country should be worried. So I hope as we're discussing, and I know I had a quick chat with Senator Tabitha on the gentleman that we're talking about, where we're talking about to approve his nomination. And she said to me, he's very knowledgeable. I do hope that we're not just coming here to approve for someone else to go and sit in central bank, but then move this country to where no one would want to be. Currently, Mr. Speaker, we have to be very realistic. De La Rue moved out of this country. When you talk about central bank in this country, they are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that they come up with policies to print currencies. We need to know, why is it that De La Rue left? How are we going to be able to print money? And I'm not saying for the sake of trying to stabilize the currency, but sometimes you have notes that become too old, so you want to print new. So I think as we deliberate and we reward Kenyans and talk about people taking over, I think for me what I would actually say is that for this gentleman who have seen the recommendations are quite good, I hope that you can be able to restructure the roadmap to saving this economy. You can be able to, in fact, if you just do one thing, if you stabilize our currency so that we move from being slaves of hard currencies, at least we can talk about Kenya having a future. The biggest challenge we have today is that although Kenya is regarded as the biggest economy in East Africa, or even some might even say in East and Central Africa, because of its stability, the problem we have is that our currency is still a soft currency. You know, I hear people talk about, why is it that we have to trade with the dollar? Why can't we not trade among each other with our currencies? You know, and maybe that's something we need to talk about. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I had one of my colleagues talk about the G2G agreement in terms of importing of petroleum into this country. And that G2G, a lot of people don't really understand. The government had nothing to do with the money. The government doesn't own anything. It is the oil marketers that own. But if the dollar continue being on a free fall, the oil marketers will still end up paying a lot of money, and that pain will still go to the citizens. So I think we have to be clear. Maybe we should have had those arrangements basing it on the Kenya shillings. I'll be happy if this gentleman would come up with policies that now would propel our Kenya shillings to be a currency that we can be able to negotiate in the East African community. I was in Arusha the other day, and I was very happy, Mr. Speaker, because I needed to deposit some Kenya shillings in my bank in Kenya. And I was very happy that I walked into Kenya Commercial Bank in Arusha, and I could deposit Kenya shillings, and they reflect immediately. So that shows, and if you go to Rwanda, the same. If you go to Uganda, the same, where Kenya Commercial Bank is. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I happen to be a trader among the East African countries. The financial institution in those countries. So I think it's about time that we now change our thinking, you know, and not continue being slaves of hard currencies. Today, look at the Kenya shillings. For $1, it's 150 shillings. Very soon, it will be 200 shillings. Suppose we can borrow the policies that are being applied by countries like Ethiopia, countries like Burundi, and then localize it. We don't necessarily have to go the way they go, but we can also localize it so that we can protect our currency. I do hope that the new governor of Central Bank, I hope that this House will approve him, will be able to now think outside the box. We can no longer continue to try and build this economy with a cut and paste. We can no longer continue to build this economy with a textbook description of how you build an economy. We have to now start thinking outside the box and say, what works for us? Mr. Speaker, if you go to a country like Tanzania today, and the Dairy Board of Tanzania has got quotas. They say if you want to export milk to Tanzania, you can only be given a license for up to 6 months, and each consignment, you have to pay some money. And they put a maximum of liters that you can be able to do what? Export to Tanzania. And that is all advised by the central bank in terms of protecting their farmers, so that whatever the farmers have becomes valuable and meaningful. So, Mr. Speaker, we are really trending in very dangerous ground at the moment in terms of trying to save this economy. You know, politics aside, we talk about issues of the bottom up. We talk about issues of different types of economics. But the truth of the matter is our people are suffering. Our currency is one of the things that I sit, think throughout, and how we're going to protect our people. Because everything we're buying now, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of fuel, relies on the dollar. So when we buy fuel at a price of about 200, and 54% of that is in taxes, the 46%, you would think Kenyans will still be able to afford. No, they can't. It becomes very expensive. But if the shilling was stable, people will be able to, to deal with it. We have such an industrious economy, a resilient population. So with good policies, good monetary policies, we will be able to move this country into, thinking, being futuristic. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I do hope that from time to time, and maybe we may end up having to amend the Constitution, because the Constitution says that, I think Article 231, that the central bank governor cannot be directed by anybody. I hope that we can be able to amend either the PFM Act, and also maybe the Constitution, just like Article 153 of the Constitution mandates each and every cabinet secretary to table the report on how their departments are performing. Maybe it is time to consider amending the Constitution, amending the PFM Act, to be able to set timelines and goals and milestones, whereby the central bank governor can be able to come to Parliament and give a report on the efforts that is put in place in terms of developing policy that will end up stabilizing our currencies. That, Mr. Speaker, I believe will be able to promote even confidence among traders in this country. Mr. Speaker, I support and I look forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni, the Honorable Senator is just concluded his remarks.
Speaker, because the Senator was making a very good, informed contribution, I waited towards his tail end so as to rise on Standing Order number 105. And is the member, Mr. Speaker, in order to blame